I don't really celebrate Christmas much. It's probably more because I don't have anyone to celebrate it with, rather than having anything in particular against the holiday itself. I live by myself. Because of this, I generally always volunteer to work during Christmas at the convenience store I'm employed at. I actually enjoy working there because there is never too much business on that day. Now that bigger stores are open more often on holidays, we don't really get the sort of business we once did. I was working Christmas night a few years back. It was dark and very cold outside. I was watching some television on a little set I had since I had not seen a customer in a really long time. I heard the bell on the door jingle and looked up to see the weirdest sight I had ever seen in my life. A guy dressed as Santa Claus came in the door, but he was the weirdest looking one I had ever seen before. The white parts of his costume were splattered red and made me immediately think that they had been covered in blood. I thought it was just some sort of sick prank and really tried my best not to think about it. The Santa gathered up a lot of items and brought them to the counter. He looked quite sinister, but I did my best to not stare at him. I wondered why he was purchasing so much, but didn't say anything. It wasn't my business. He paid me by giving me a big wad of cash and then left the store. I thought it was weird, but I went back to watching my show. About half an hour later, I heard the bell jingle again. I was surprised we were getting another customer so quickly. I looked up and was shocked to see a man crawling into the convenience store. He was covered in stab wounds and blood. I quickly ran around the counter to help him, asking him what happened. What he told me shocked me. He said he was jumped and stabbed multiple times by a man dressed as Santa. The man took all of his money and left him in a ditch. I called 911 and got the man an ambulance and reported the incident to the police. They were never able to catch the guy because we really had no real idea what he looked like. I never believed in Santa Claus at all. I don't know why. My little brother Phil was the complete opposite though. He seemed to believe in Santa Claus so strongly that the slightest implication that he didn't exist would be taken as a personal affront. He would actually do his best to hide and catch Santa when he was leaving presents, so he would have the proof needed to put me in my place. Fortunately for my parents, he always fell asleep from waiting too long. They'd put him back to bed and then put the presents out. He always got angry at himself in the morning for not being able to remain awake. Fortunately, those thoughts would all soon leave his mind as he became entranced with the opening of presents. When Phil was 9, I began to think that he had outgrown his need to try and prove that Santa Claus existed. He was in bed even before I was. I let my parents know he was fast asleep so they wouldn't have to outwait him. They went ahead and put the presents out early so they could go to bed. They knew I didn't believe in Santa Claus and wouldn't be going and examining the presents. They went to bed then, and I went to bed too. I woke up feeling someone shaking me. I opened my eyes and noticed that it was dark. I saw Phil was the one shaking me awake. I told him that we weren't allowed to go out and open presents until it was morning. I tried to push him away until he said something to me that was confusing enough that I had to put aside sleep for explanation. "Kevin, is there a reverse Santa Claus?" Phil asked me. "What are you talking about?" I asked him. I went to bed early so I could be up later because I wanted to catch Santa Claus, he explained. "There's someone there, but he is taking things, not leaving them." I sat straight up in bed, realizing instantly that either my brother must have had a bad dream or that someone indeed had broken into our house. I began getting out of bed and he began telling me that he would show me. I made him be quiet and to stay in the room while I checked it out. Yeah, I probably should have gone right to my parents. But I really was like 80% sure that there was nothing to get excited about. I crept out into the hallway and made my way close to the living room. I didn't see anything at first, and I just believed that my brother was imagining things. But then I heard a noise coming up from the far side of the living room. There was a sliding glass door out there. I snuck around the corner just in time to see a man closing the glass door behind him. As he latched it, fate had him look up until he was looking at me directly eye to eye. I got a very good look at his face and he knew it. I saw the man start to open the door again as I turned and ran down the hallway at full speed. I began pounding on my dad's door as loudly as I could. My dad got up and I let him know that someone had broken into the house and was coming back in. By this point, Phil had heard the commotion and was in the hallway. My dad shooed both of us into the room and then went to look around the house. After a long time, we heard a knocking on the door. Our hearts all jumped, but it was our dad. No one was in the house, although things were missing. My mom had already called the police. The reverse Santa Claus, as my brother called him, was arrested that night. He had taken things from ours and a few other houses. A fillet knife was found in a holster inside his jacket, and that made me wonder what he may have done if he had caught me. The kids in my neighborhood were really well known for making snowmen, and they wouldn't just put them up in their own yard either. They would build snowmen throughout winter and put them up in yards all over the neighborhood. It wasn't an unusual sight to wake up one morning and see a snowman in your yard where no snowman had been before. One year, which I will never ever forget, there was a purpose to the snowman being put up that was other than just entertainment. A young boy in the town, a first grader if I remember correctly, had never come home from school. Our neighborhood was very close to the elementary school, and parents at the time seldom walked their kids to school and back. This happened quite a long time ago, mind you. Most of the kids in the neighborhood walked to school around the same time, so it wasn't like the kids were alone. It seemed less likely that something would have happened to the kids when this happened. But that boy didn't come home. Groups were organized to do a search for the boy. The police questioned everyone, but he wasn't found. The children in the neighborhood built more snowmen that year than they had ever built before. And around the neck of each snowman they put a sign with the picture of the little boy who had gone missing. And although it warmed the hearts of the people who lived there, it was all for naught because they didn't help us find that boy. I won't mention where I lived because I don't want to draw undue attention to the area. As I mentioned, this happened long ago, but the winters were long, a lot longer than they are now, or so it seemed. And those snowmen lasted a long time. And in the months that those snowmen lasted, they did little to help find that little boy. In the spring, of course, the snowmen began melting. They had been up for quite a long time, so they were icy. They took time to melt. After about a week of constant warm days and constant warm sunshine, they were mostly gone. And that was when I made the worst discovery of my life. You see, I was a student at the elementary school when that little boy was also. And I was walking to school one day, noticing how the snowmen were now snow half-men. And it was then that I saw something I wish I could unsee even decades later. One of the snowmen, only one, caught my eye as I was walking to school. There was something weird and off about the shape of it as it was melting. It was only then, upon closer inspection, that I began screaming and calling other students closer to me. You see, there was the body of a boy inside that snowman, and the snowman was built on the yard of the parents of that boy. Whatever insane person murdered that poor boy made sure he was only meters from his parents all winter long, but completely unable to be found.